Cox, what grade would you give the legislature? I know they're not finished. Don't say complete. Let's not try to be cute.
Honestly, this session I would give them, let's go with an A minus. This has been one of my favorite sessions here with the legislature in the more than a decade that I've been involved. And I just think when you look at kind of the top line issues, having the largest tax cut in our state's history by a factor of 3 when you include the potential for the food tax being removed, and then the historic investments in education, historic investments in housing and infrastructure, and historic investments in water. Though when you add all of that up, I think that's something that we'll remember for a long, long time.
Okay, so you've talked about what you like. What haven't you liked about this? Why didn't they get an A or an A plus?
Well, I guess maybe I'm a harsh grader. That's why. Because they didn't adopt everything in my budget. That's what it takes to get an A plus. But they came really close, and so I'd say it's a really positive session. There were a couple things that I was hoping for that I didn't get, which is fine. I know how this process works. We had worked hard to get some funding for transit, for free fare for a year. That was one that we pushed on that we didn't get. But again, I'm getting the tax removed off of food, which is something I didn't plan for this year. I thought we would have to wait until next year to try to get that done, and we were able to get it through this year.
Yeah, but all of that is contingent on the 2024 ballot that just got placed on the ballot. Educators aren't completely on board, but they might get on board. That's going to make this a much easier conversation.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident after the discussions that were held yesterday and into last night and then this morning, the conversations that we've had, keeping some of those guardrails in the Constitution, I think should satisfy them, as well as the historic investments that are coming in. And there's going to be a lot of support for getting that remaining state tax off of food. So I feel very confident that we will get that done.
What's on your veto list?
Yeah, not much. I had a whole bunch of things heading into this week, and to their credit, those bills either ended up not passing or were changed substantially over the course of the week. So we will look at the list when we get done, but there's not much out there right now. I'm getting a lot of feedback today on a bill that I hadn't paid much attention to around a year-round hunting for mountain lions. Mm-hmm. So this was one that was not on our radar of the 800 bills that we're moving through the process, and it's something I'm going to have to take a serious look at. But I suspect some of those pop up over the course of the next couple of days. But right now, we really don't have much on the veto list.
One that you said you didn't see until it was made public was Representative Lisenby's HB 467. Yeah. So I'm curious, now that you've had more time to look at it, if there's anything in that bill that you don't like.
Well, I will be signing the bill, so I feel comfortable with it. I feel comfortable with the process. The hospitals were included in helping to get that bill where it needed to be. That was a request that came in early on, that the trigger bill wasn't clear enough that for those abortions that would still be legal under that bill, and there was a request. There was a feeling that many of the providers were just going to say, hey, we don't, because there's no clarity, we're not going to be able to provide any of those abortions, even where they're legal under that bill, and that they wanted that clarity. They were at the table, feel better about it. So I will be signing that bill.
But are there any things that you don't like in the bill? Because there are a lot
it doesn't matter.
of things that happen.
I'll be signing the bill.
Okay.
A bill that you signed early in the session was SB 616, which banned. It placed a hold on gender-affirming care for transgender youth, banned some surgical procedures. And I haven't had a chance to ask you this, but how do you square signing that piece of legislation with your veto of the transgender sports ban last year?
Sure, yeah. No, I've talked a lot about this over the course of the past couple months, and I mentioned that for my purposes, my research, I actually went outside of the United States. And that's where I was looking at what is happening in countries where we're not seeing this culture war battle, and where there's real solid discussion and evidence-based decisions being made. And those were the countries I looked to, and felt comfortable with the way the bill is laid out, that we're going to be collecting this data and this science and information, and coming back and making a more permanent decision later on. So I understand again those that disagree with that and are upset with this bill, but I felt like it was the right approach, and that's why I signed the bill.
How much influence did you have on the process this year when SB 16 passed? You said that's not how you would have done it. We talked about the abortion bill, HB 4667, and you didn't see it until it came out of the or until it was made public. How much influence did you have on those two bills specifically, and the process overall?
So on SB 16, that was a bill that we had conversations about for many months. There was an interim version of that bill that was presented in I want to say October, maybe November. Yeah. I think so. So that was certainly one. We'd been involved in conversations on the other bill for many months, but had just never seen the final product, what that was going to look like until it came out. But our teams are very engaged in process, and again, I appreciate the legislature and their process. There was, if there was anything I might have tweaked a little bit, they did vote pretty quickly on a couple of those bills early in the session, where under suspension of the rules, they moved the vote up a day or something. I don't know that was necessary, and it led to some criticism, I think, from the public and from the media, and so I suspect that those are maybe some things that they would have done differently in retrospect. But I do believe that by and large the process this year has been much better. Again, with the caveat that we still have a couple hours left, and a lot can happen on the last night of the session.
You talked about the tax cut package that was passed, and you're going to sign that into law. It is radically different from what you proposed in your budget. You proposed
radically different? Well, I wouldn't say it's radically different. I would say it's very similar.
You proposed a 0.1% decrease in the rate. They doubled that.
Yes.
You proposed a rebate check of sorts to Utahns. That never even got off the table.
Right.
But you're satisfied with what they did?
I'm ecstatic with what they did, and again, you have to understand that the rebate piece, again, losing that but getting the tax off of food, that's an additional $200 million. If my budget has to come out in October. That's when we start working on it. It has to be out by the 1st of December. So had I known that there would be an appetite to discuss the tax on food, we always knew that they would be, that there would have to be a change to the Constitution for that to happen, just because of the structure that we have. And so the only way that could happen is a vote of the people, and the only way that could happen is in 2024. And so I felt like we probably wouldn't be able to do that until next year. But as we started having conversations early on with the Speaker and the President, they said, we might want to look at this year. I said, I'm all in. So I was more than willing to give up the one-time rebates to get that tax off of food.
I am curious about what water. We talked about the money for the Great Salt Lake. Yeah. Are you worried that there's going to be a complacency that sets in because we've had such a wet winter?
I'm not worried about that because, again, the will of the legislature, the will of leadership and our office is that this is the best opportunity right now to continue with what we've started and to get more water to the end of the road, to the Great Salt Lake. It feels like we've gotten some breathing room to implement everything that we've been working on, and that we'll see even greater results because we've made these changes over the past 2 years. So I honestly feel really optimistic. This new position, Bryan, is going to make a huge impact. This new commissioner of the Great Salt Lake, and the ag optimization money that we've gotten, and last year. The other thing I just want to point out is the money that we set aside last year to buy water rights for the Great Salt Lake, that's just happening right now. So that when the runoff starts, we're going to have new water rights for the Great Salt Lake. Some of those will be senior water rights, not just junior rights, that water that's never happened before, that water will go directly into the lake. So I think that we needed the last 2 years to get us to this point, and this will just help us do everything we wanted to do.
What would you like to see discussed and happen in the interim?
What would I like to see discussing happening in interim? I actually had a conversation with the speaker last night about this. I want to see us work more closely with the education community to work on the big issues before the session starts, so that we don't have 150 education bills that pop up and everybody's trying to play whack-a-mole, what works, what doesn't. Let's get the big stuff out early. Let's talk about it. Let's try to find consensus, and so that we are ready to move when the legislature starts. We've done that with the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission. I think it's a really good model. Myself, the president, the speaker, representatives from higher ed, from public ed, from League of Cities and Towns, all and other legislators working on economic issues. But I want to do that same thing with education.
Well, on that point, I'm curious what you think about the language in Representative Jimenez's individual freedom and public education bill.
Yeah.
I know Senator Escamilla said that she was frustrated. She felt it went past some of the work that the Ethnic Studies Commission is doing.
Okay.
And I'm curious what your take is on that.
So I need to look at it, because what I was told is that there were significant changes made to it, to the point where the education community said that they were pretty much fine with it, with the major changes that were made from the original version of the bill. So I haven't seen the new version, so I will need to look at that and see. But certainly, again, that's one area, right, where we have the Ethnic Studies Commission working. This would have been a perfect area to bring all these bills together, to work on them over the interim, so we're not dealing with them the last week of the session and trying to figure it out.
The moment that the gavel falls, everybody's going to start looking at 2024. Not only, and I'm not talking about the election, I'm talking about the upcoming session.
Okay, yeah.
So what didn't get done this year that they're going to have to come back and get done next year, or what are you looking at?
Yeah, so just a reminder, when the gavel falls, I have 21 days to review all 550 bills, or however many we get. Everybody goes on vacation and starts thinking about next year, except for us. And so what didn't they get done that they'll need to come back for? Free fare, that's one that we didn't get done that we'll need to come back for. I really feel like all the big stuff, I think we'll see more on housing. I really do, Brian. I think we did some big things this year that will help, but I don't think we're done on that one. And how do we get what we know we need, and specifically starter homes? That's one area where I think they've kind of disappeared over the last 20 years. I think we would like to find ways to incentivize more of that to happen. But I would love to come back and say, hey, we filled that 30,000 unit gap over the next year, but I suspect that won't be the case.
Okay, I will slip it in. Are you running for re-election?
I am. I will be running for re-election. Yeah, I made a promise to the people of Utah that I would not serve more than 2 terms, and we will stick to that promise. You can write it in ink right now. I will not run for a 3rd term, but I will run for a 2nd term. I feel really good about what we've accomplished over the past 3 years, and we still have things left to do.